Hello, church. It's so good to be with you at whatever time of day you're catching this week's Take 5. As we continue our journey through the Sermon on the Mount, we find that Jesus continues to raise the bar and also to challenge our way of thinking. Every time I read this, I often wonder what it must have been like to be on the hillside that day in Galilee and to hear this for the first time. These countercultural remarks that were so radical in nature. I know how we react to them after 2,000 years of Christendom. I can't even begin to imagine how it must have been for the initial hearers. So we find ourselves in a section called an eye for an eye, found in Matthew chapter 5, beginning in verse 38. It says, "You have heard that it was said, an eye for an eye and a tooth for a tooth." Right? So equal justice in terms of what the old law said. But it says now, "But I tell you, do not resist an evil person. If anyone slaps you on the right cheek, turn to them the other cheek also. And if anyone wants to sue you and take your shirt, hand over your coat as well. If anyone forces you to go 1 mile, go with them 2 miles. Give to the one who asks you, and do not turn away from the one who wants to borrow from you." Whew. There's a lot going on there. And you really want to say to Jesus, come on. Seriously, man? I mean, in this world, you expect me to turn the other cheek? You want me to give my shirt away? You want me to walk an extra mile? Really, it feels like a lot to ask. And so what is the premise behind this for Jesus? Well, one of the things that I want us to understand in the culture of the day, Roman law was at that time that a centurion of any rank could have a Jewish or Gentile person, a regular person, carry their pack 1 mile. Not 2, but 1. So when Jesus says, if someone asks you to carry their pack 1 mile, carry it a second mile. I think what Jesus is saying is when it comes to these concepts of vengeance and revenge, he wants us to take a different route. He wants us to go another way. So it's hard for me to imagine that if somebody slapped me on the face, that I could turn and expose my other cheek to them as well. I don't think in anybody's flesh that feels normal. And yet, one of the things that I see in our culture has become so violent. So you know that I follow sports. I watch sports all the time. It is a regular occurrence at every major league ball field, at every major league stadium. There are fights, college stadiums. There are fights in the stands. There are fights in the concourses. There's fights over who's in line. I saw an example the other day. Dee Dee and I had a chance to go to Gainesville and watch the girls softball team play at Florida. And it's one of our passions. It's one of the things we enjoy. And sure enough, we're at a concession line waiting to get some bottled water. It's hot. And then we're about 3 people in front. I've been in line for about 20 minutes. And they shut the line down. Well, the guy in front of me loses his mind on all these concession workers. I mean, just literally loses his mind. There was no amount of calming him down because our instructions were that we had to go to the back of the second line after we had been in line. Honestly, church, there was nothing fair about it. But it was what was happening. I mean, what are you going to change? You either want water or you don't want water. You either want a hot dog, you don't want a hot dog. The bottom line is that his revolt against this moment was, first of all, over dramatized. But secondly, it didn't change anything. Maybe that's what Jesus is trying to teach us here, is to have a response other than turning the cheek, other than going the extra mile, other than giving the shirt off your back, is not going to achieve anything. Maybe to have a response that's angry and that's vitriol really only makes things worse. Now, I want to be clear here. I don't think Jesus is asking us to be a doormat where we just have to take it and take it and take it. But I do think that Jesus is telling us that there is a higher standard for us when it comes to how we think about an eye for an eye and a tooth for a tooth. That's not the way of Christ, that he's called us to love. And we'll see this next week as we get into a passage on love your enemies. But church, for our purposes today, I think we have to be looking into culture. How do we go the extra mile? How do we raise the standard of being kind and loving in a response to the world full of hate, right? We are baited into it. Jesus is saying, don't take the bait. It's not going to achieve anything. No good comes from it. So church, it's a fine balance for us as Jesus confronts us with the way things are in the world and his way of doing things. And if we love him, we'll want to do his way of doing things. Again, church, I find myself in this position again this week telling you, not easy teaching. Wasn't easy 2,000 years ago. Not easy today. Probably harder today. But I think it is still our command of our Lord to go and do likewise. So I hope you find yourself this week praying about this, where you sit in this, how you understand vengeance, how you understand getting back with somebody. Maybe Jesus is just asking us to take a different stance. Know how much I love you. I hope this has been a blessing to you today, and I look forward to seeing you next week. Love you.